Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm your host, Tony Stewart. Today, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Hillary Gale, who's a finance marketing strategist and host of the Finance Marketing Podcast. We're going to be talking about authenticity and storytelling and how they can help financial professionals build stronger relationships and how both can play a powerful role in increasing financial literacy. Hillary, welcome. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I mean, I've learned so much from you personally that I can't wait for my audience to also share, in all the great things that you're doing. So, to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story and how did you find your way into marketing?
Sure. Well, first of all, I really appreciate that. I loved working with you, Tony, and I love what you're doing as well. Um, my origin story is I am actually a former teacher. I spent the first part of my career teaching college English writing classes. And so I have a really strong research and writing background. I really saw myself being kind of an academic when I was younger. And back in 2020, I was already kind of looking for a way out of teaching. It unfortunately wasn't everything that I had dreamed it would be, even though there were parts of it that I loved. And so I decided to take my writing skills to people who I thought I would really enjoy working with, which is financial advisors and financial coaches and people who just love to talk about money and help people with their money. I grew up with a CPA for a dad, and so my household was always, very money positive. We always talked about money growing up. I feel like I learned a lot of good lessons uh, as a child and a teenager about money that a lot of my peers maybe didn't get. And so when I was thinking about taking my writing skills and building a career out of that, it just made sense to me. I wanted to work with people who worked with money.
Well, that's awesome. Well, my dad was a CPA too, so
I didn't
kindred
know that.
spirit, small world.
Yes, yes.
So for everybody who's got a dad who's a CPA, congrats. So that is awesome. And I mean, it's all about communication and marketing, and that's one of the big things that financial services struggles with is our marketing message.
Mm.
But one of the things is, we may work for a company, but we're all developing our own personal brand.
Mhm.
Could you share with us what does it mean to have a personal brand and why should people care?
Yeah. So I think what it means to have a personal brand is the first time that somebody gets on a call with you, they probably already have a sense of who you are. They've gotten to know you before you've actually gotten to know them, or before perhaps you even know that they exist because you have branded yourself online, and you are recognizable online. So I think personal branding is all about sharing your stories, sharing your values, basically finding a way to resonate with people online. And the value of that is, money is a really vulnerable topic of conversation. It's a really vulnerable part of our lives. It's hard to talk to other people about our money situations. And so if you can develop a really strong personal brand online that makes people feel comfortable and gets people excited and makes them want to talk to you, then that bridge of trust is going to be a lot easier to build if you want them to actually get on a call and talk with you, or to keep subscribing and reading your content.
Yeah, and as you talk about that, I think, for older people, it's really your reputation, that you join maybe the Elks Club or something. That's before my time, but that you are active in the community and that a personal brand is maybe not a buzzword, but it's how you present yourself to the rest of the world. And that is how you build, as you mentioned, you build trust and everything as you build up who you are professionally.
I think that's absolutely right. I think that your personal brand today is kind of like your elevator pitch almost in a way. It's people can immediately say, oh, this is Tony, and this is what Tony's all about. This is what Tony does.
Definitely. And I think that's a good way, I mean, you can even check, well, you can ask ChatGPT what it knows about you, because I've asked it what my personal brand is, and I was pretty surprised. It's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
But if ChatGPT doesn't know about you, for people watching and listening, ask a business partner, ask your client, ask your significant other, and get a sense of who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and how you're presenting yourself, because that's really your personal brand. Because there's that old saying, people do business with people at the
Mm,
end of the day.
right, right. And I don't know about your dad, Tony, but my dad, he was another reason why I really wanted to work with other people in finance because initially growing up, I thought, oh, my dad, he just works with numbers all day. He's an accountant, he's a math person. That's not me. But as I grew up, I learned that's really not the case. He was in it for the people. He loved it for the people. He loved it for the relationships and the guidance he could provide, and things like that. And I see that in so many other people who talk about money and who help people with their money.
Definitely. Yeah. And my dad went on to be a CFO, but it was the same thing as, the way people talked about him is, I'm like, I hope people talk about me like that when I'm older.
Mm-hmm.
That they talk about me with respect and that there's somebody that they want to work with. And I think that's it, is that as an advisor, it's like, do your clients really value what they're getting from you? Do they
Mm-hmm.
listen to you?
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, are you forming a bond with your clients? And I think that's important. I mean, do you think that's something? So, what would you say to advisors who are working, to create that bond with their clients?
Well, something comes to mind that maybe a little bit tangential, but I think it's very pertinent. So I don't know if you're familiar with Wealth Tender, which is an online financial advisory directory, also for financial coaches and things like that. So consumers or potential clients can go on, they can find an advisor who fits their needs. It's a great, great platform. What the founder Brian Thorpe does is he really helps advisors market using testimonials that their clients have written for them, compliantly. And so his company just did a study recently where they analyzed over 2,500 client testimonials for advisors, and they found that 89% were all about the relationship with the advisor. They were all about how the advisor made them feel, how they impacted their life. I think only 10% of testimonials even mentioned something like investment performance or portfolio management or something like that. So, what that says to me is that clients, they really value the relationship. They really value the bond that you create with them. They value that you care about them as a human and what they want for their life and how they can help you, how you can help them get there. They don't care as much about investment performance or things like that. So I think creating that bond and being able to be a people person, I think is 90% of the job as a financial advisor.
Well, I think so. And I think of all the great advisors that I've met, and it's the ones who are able to relate to their clients and to form that relationship. And as you talk about Wealth Tender, and a shout out to Brian Thorpe, who's an amazing person. If you're an advisor, thoroughly recommend checking out Wealth Tender. This is not an endorsement by any means, but they're a great platform. Is it is all about the personal brand and who you are. And people refer to people that they trust and
Mm-hmm.
have respect for. So it is important to build that up. So one of the other things you talk about is authenticity. So why is authenticity such a powerful tool in financial communication?
Well, a couple of things. There is another study that's out there that shows that financial advisors aren't well trusted. I don't know if that's not the most articulate way of saying that, but a lot of people who don't work with financial advisors see financial advisors as untrustworthy. I think there's been, some unfortunate headlines about bad actors in the space, and those kind of get, blown out of proportion and things like that. And so I think that advisors need to show their authenticity when they're marketing online so that people can see, oh, this is a person that I have things in common with. This is a person just like me. This isn't a person in a suit who's going to try to sell me products that I don't need, right? They need to see who you are again in order to develop that trust to even be comfortable scheduling a discovery call or signing up for your newsletter or whatever it might be. Does that answer your question? I feel like there were multiple parts to your question.
Uh, yeah, actually, that does. So, as we talk about authenticity, there's probably people out there going, okay, what is authenticity?
Mm.
Because that would be my next question is, how would you define authenticity?
Hmm. I think people approach authenticity and specifically being authentic online in different ways. One particular advisor that I have talked with, who I think does this really, really well, is Larry Sprung of Midland Financial. And he talks about sometimes it's as simple as just posting on his business Instagram account what he's up to with his family that weekend, or where they're going on vacation, or something like that, just kind of giving a little bit of a glimpse into his personal life. So again, people can say, oh, I have something in common with this guy. That looks really fun. Oh, I've been there before. I'm going to reach out to him and say, oh, I had so much fun, at that vacation spot or whatever it might be. I think another way is to be a little bit vulnerable online. It feels scary, it feels counterintuitive, but it's something that people really connect with deeply. So if you're an advisor who in your 20s you made a big money mistake, you can talk about that and people will connect with that. And you can talk about how you maybe walked back that mistake or how you recovered from it or something like that. But when you show yourself as not this perfect, buttoned up, polished persona, people are going to really appreciate that. And I think in our age of AI generated content, that's even more important. I think people are really losing their taste for that super polished professional content, and they want to see people that are more real and that are more raw and things like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, as we were talking about, a little bit pre-show about moving back to a pre-social media stages, like when I had client relationships, is I had relationships. We went out to lunch. We talked about each other's families. We
Mm,
talked, about sporting events or whatever. I mean, we even went to baseball games together.
right.
And so you actually knew something about the person, which I think builds up that trust. And I think maybe that's a trend towards authenticity, is that people can say, okay, what in this case, we'll pick on Larry. And he's a great guy. So I recommend everybody check out Larry Sprung. But Larry is very open and you feel like you know him
Mm,
and what he's doing. And I think that does add, it makes us three-dimensional. It makes us real people.
yep.
Um, so
And I think too, it makes it easier for clients to then open up about themselves without you having to kind of interrogate them almost on a Zoom call. If you share, I'm in Colorado. So if you share, I went to a Rockies game, this past weekend, and a client gets on a call with you or a prospect gets on a call with you and they say, oh, I saw you went to the Rockies game last weekend. I just went to a Mets game or whatever it might be. Then they've already shared with you, okay, they really like baseball too. We have this in common. And you can start to build that relationship, give them something to latch onto with you. And then you can get to know more about them in a very natural way.
yeah, and you become a real person. you're developing a relationship, and that is so important because so many financial decisions, in the testimonials that you reference from the Wealth Tender Survey bear this out, is financial decisions are not really made about the numbers.
Mm,
They're made about the emotions and our money story and how we feel about things and our trust with the advisors is, like there's a lot of clients who hire a new financial planner and they'll have them manage a small portion of their portfolio or just do one or two things, to check out how they do
right.
and, how the relationship progresses. So, I think all this stuff is important. The reputation, how you're building this up. So, let's talk about leading with the relationships. What happens when financial professionals decide to start leading with relationships instead of results? How does that change the dynamic?
Mm. Oh, that's such a good question. I think it almost feels counterintuitive at first. If you're trying really hard to grow, you're like, I want to be on sales calls. I want to close, close, close all the time. But that doesn't actually end up working out for you in the long run. I think when you start relationships and that's your focus of showing up online, creating content, building your personal brand, you open up so many more doors for people to then refer to you, to be happier with your service. So then they're going to refer to their friends and their clients. Um, I'm sorry, their friends and their family, not their clients. And so I think that leading with relationships, it just ends up bringing so much more back to you in the long run than doing something like spending all of your time cold calling or spending all of your time sending mass cold emails or something like that.
I think so. And it helps people develop a level of comfort where they're already not comfortable talking about money.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are comfortable about talking about money, but the majority of people really don't want to talk about money. Even if they're there seeing a financial planner, they still don't want to talk about money.
Mm-hmm.
So, leading with that relationship, it also warms up the conversation and makes it more human, which is what we've been talking about. Now, the other dimension that, you and I have been talking a lot about is storytelling, is instead of just, you know, giving straight information is, using storytelling. So how do you think advisors can use storytelling to change the way we educate people about money?
Mm. Well, let me see if I can come up with an example. So you mentioned instead of just giving straight information. So I think instead of just writing a LinkedIn post or writing a blog post or even creating a podcast or something like that around how a backdoor Roth conversion works, right? Which is just a topic that advisors love to talk about, right? They're always so excited to talk about a backdoor Roth conversion. No one else is excited to talk about that besides advisors. But it can have some really big impacts for high earning individuals. It can really help them save a lot more and all of these benefits. So what I think a better way to do is to maybe look at a client that you've actually helped with this and bring in their story into how you're talking about the benefits of a Roth IRA conversion. Talk about what were they worried about before you suggested uh, this strategy? What were they afraid would happen if they didn't do about this? Or what did they not know? What could have come for them in retirement, maybe tax wise, if they didn't do this? And so you bring in some of that emotion because, like you said, money is probably 99% emotional and 1% logical, right? 1% about the numbers. And so if you can teach your information while bringing in those very real fears and desires, about why we would do the strategy in the first place, that's going to resonate so much more easily with people online than just giving them the education. They don't want the education, right? They have enough other things pulling on their attention.
Well, I think you're exactly right. Nobody cares about most of the stuff that we think they care about in the financial services industry. They don't care about the backdoor Roth IRA per se. but they do care about what it can do for them and how it solves their problem. And I think that's the part where you make that transition to storytelling is that you're solving the challenge, which is, the hero's journey is,
Right.
the hero has the issue, the hero goes on a journey, blah, 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 faces adversity, overcomes adversity, and solves the problem. And that's, you know, as an advisor, that's why somebody's coming to you is because they have a problem. They're facing an adversity that they can't overcome on their own, and you can help them solve their problem. But that's what I think that's what people really want.
I think very, very, very few people want to optimize, and I'm using air quotes here, want to optimize their finances just for the sake of optimizing their finances, right? They want to make good financial decisions to achieve this goal and to avoid this bad thing from happening and things like that. And I think that's where storytelling really comes in because you can tell stories around what that goal is or what that fear is, uh, rather than just, talking about financial strategies and financial plans for their own sake. And I do think that there is a little bit of a danger for uh, financial professionals and financial content creators, especially on LinkedIn, because we all follow each other. We all comment on each other's stuff. And so obviously we're excited about those strategies, but it's important to remember the people we're trying to help and to attract as clients that they need the emotional stuff.
Well, and it gets back to even the content that we react to for each other is like some of the most commented posts are, if it's okay if I bring up that post that you got a lot of comments on.
Yeah.
So somebody who wrote you something, a very not a very nasty remark about a job, but you were very open and honest. And I would imagine it must have been hard to actually share that.
Oh, I went back and forth on whether I should share that or not. And I will tell you, Tony, and I actually have some separate thoughts about this, but that post ended up getting over 150,000 impressions on
Holy
LinkedIn.
moly.
It went totally. I lost control of it. So but you're right. It's those personal posts. That has, I'm a marketer. That had nothing to do with marketing. And I knew that when I posted it. That had nothing to do with marketing. That post wasn't necessarily for my audience, right? It wasn't going to help them with their own marketing. But because it was one, vulnerable for me to share, and two, it just was very personal. I think people really latched onto it. A lot of people shared their own stories of having received emails like that. A lot of people reached out to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you received an email like that. You didn't deserve that," whatever it might be. And I often find if I share a post about my kids or what it's like to be a working mom or anything like that, I get so many more comments on posts like that than I do on posts about emails and things like that.
Well, I think that post, I would say what I really thought worked for that post, and I know this is not why you posted, is it did actually go to show that you're an authentic, real person, and other people could identify with you because we've all had people say or do things that were inappropriate or mean or
Right, right.
all the things. And so I think that resonated with people because people are like, wow, this is what it's like to be authentic and
Hmm.
to let yourself down because instead of you hiding that behind a mask, you were open. And so I know personally, I admired you for sharing that. Um, and I thought it was really a more powerful. I mean, you've written some amazing things, and so for full disclosure, everybody watching and listening, I've hired Hillary to help me with some of my marketing. Um, I'm a real fan of your marketing, but I think that really made you a real person
Mm,
in some ways. And I think that's why it resonated with people. It wasn't an AI generated post. It wasn't, like you said, it wasn't about marketing, but it actually was a marketing post because your name got in front. I mean, not that you planned it this way and not that you wanted this, but it got you in front of over 100,000 people. So 100,000 people have seen the name Hillary Gale
right.
now. And maybe that'll give you business, maybe it won't. But it did, it cements that you are an authentic, real person who is really out there leading their lives. And for other potential clients, are going to say, wow, okay, if I work with Hillary, she's a real person. She's
Mm,
overcoming adversity. I'm overcoming adversity in my life.
mm,
So I think that that made you very real.
mhm.
Um, in a lot of ways. It's unfortunate that you had to go through that and to receive an email like that. That kind of stuff is hard and it's never fair. Um, but I think it makes you very real. And so for everybody watching and listening, if you're thinking about something that happened, is, you can share your negative stories
Mhm.
as well, the bad things that happen, because I think that's the thing on social media, especially like something like Instagram. It's like, ooh, they're going to all these fancy places and,
Right.
and eating these great foods and all this stuff. But, that's not real. And they're not doing that every day. Most days they're going home watching TV or I don't know, going for a walk
Right.
or whatever, you know.
It's
Nobody
so
wants
true.
McDonald's, you know.
Yeah, it's so true. And that post, it was really vulnerable for me to share because it was a very nasty email. And um, I ended up, because it got so many impressions, I ended up finding out that that person has actually sent that email to several other people, who recruiters and things like that. So I'm not the only one. But when I received that email, I was just about to sit down to dinner with my family, and I opened my inbox and I read that email, and I took it very, very personally. Some things that she had written in that email, they actually kind of touched on some things that I had already been fearing about the hiring process and things like that. And so it was vulnerable for me to share because it was like, well, what if she's right? I don't want other people to think this about me, or I don't want I don't want other people to think that I'm this horrible person, and things like that. But I actually am so glad that I posted it, because I did hear from so many people who reminded me that I'm not a horrible person, right? I, so again, it is to that point of sharing a negative story or something that happens to you. I think it just makes you so much more real. We all sometimes have those heart-stopping moments in our businesses, right? Where we're just like, oh, that didn't feel good. And that is just how life works sometimes.
I think so. And, and I think that's, not, we'll switch up in a sec, but, I received a very nasty email from somebody that I thought was a business friend,
Mm-hmm.
associate. And, and then I had to stop and think about it. Is this really more about me or him?
Right.
You know, is everybody else telling me something different, or who am I? And I think to really bring this all the way back, to being authentic and building up your personal brand is to have faith in who you are and to check who you are
Mm-hmm.
with other people. Because, at the end of the day, is you could see how many people stood up for you and said, and I know I was more than glad to post like, no, this is not you. And, that so many people stood up and said, no,
Mm-hmm.
this is not right. This is not an accurate portrayal of who you are or how you come across. And it's pretty much 180 degrees
Mm-hmm.
from who you are. And I think that's something where if you've established a personal brand because you have touched me, you've touched other people in financial services, that you have that personal brand.
Mm,
Of the authenticity, then when people saw an email, right away people were like, no, Hillary, that's not you.
right.
So if you're thinking out there, like, why do I need a personal brand? Why do I need to be authentic? That hopefully this gives you an idea of where it can help you establish who you are, not only for your community, but for yourself. Uh,
Right.
so I appreciate you going down that little lane with me. But I think I'm hoping that this will be helpful for those watching and listening. So, it's time to wrap up with what I call the Get Ready Hot Take Trio. 3 quick questions to help our listeners change the way they think about money. The first question is, what money myth are you trying to break?
Mm. Ooh, I think, ooh, I'm trying to put it into words. The money myth that I'm trying to break is that earning a high income isn't just for a special elite class of people. I think anyone is capable of earning the money that they want to earn. Um, and that there are lots of opportunities to make money that we don't always allow ourselves to see.
Oh, I like that. Plenty of opportunities that we don't allow ourselves to see. Um, I think that's really it, is that sometimes I don't know if blinders is quite the right word,
Mm-hmm,
but we only see certain things, or we only see ourselves in a certain way.
mm-hmm,
And I think it is important to realize there may be other opportunities. So if you feel like you're being held back or not truly seen for who you are, is that you can do that. And this is a great way to help somebody else out as well.
mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
to
We need to
recognize that there are other opportunities.
we need to give ourselves permission to, find more for ourselves if we're not happy with our current situation.
Yeah, give yourself permission. And I think that's a huge thing I've seen with money, is that we get trapped in these stories and cycles and everything. And we have to give ourselves permission, and we have to give ourselves grace
Mm-hmm,
to be able to move on.
mm-hmm.
So the next question is, let's get out the time machine for a minute. What advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time knowing what you know now about money?
Mm. I don't want to say the first thing that popped into my mind because I'm sure that everybody says it. So I might say that, and then I might say a different one. The first thing that popped into my mind is, oh my gosh, just start saving your $20 a month when you're 19 years old into your retirement account, because it will compound so much over time. Now that I'm 32, I just wish that I could go back to college age Hillary and say, just start, even though you feel like you don't have anything right now.
That's always great advice, and it can never be said enough. And so, for older people who are watching and listening, it's a good lesson for your kids.
Mm-hmm. 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 You know what I would like to do for my kids? And I'm kind of surprised that my CPA dad didn't do this for me, but when they are old enough to get a job, whether it's babysitting or it's working at a fast food restaurant or whatever, I would like to open a Roth IRA for them and match whatever they save into their Roth IRA.
That is a great tip. Of course, it has to be a backdoor Roth IRA. I'm just kidding. Call
It's
back.
like, it does. How much are they going to be earning for babysitting?
I don't know. What's the going rate nowadays? I mean, minimum wage is what, $20?
Yeah, I actually just interviewed a couple babysitters this week, between $15 to $20 an hour.
It's incredible.
I know, it's pretty good.
Not a bad gig. So, Hillary, to wrap up, what is your number one tip for changing the way we think about money?
Mm. My number one tip is to talk about your own money situations. If we're going to help people get more comfortable talking about money, we have to lead the way, and we have to talk about our own financial situations, uh, with or without shame. Just come as you are, I think is kind of the key.
I like that. And that goes back to being authentic, is, nobody is perfect with their
Mhm.
financial life. Everybody I know in the financial planning world has had some money mistake that they've made.
Mm.
So when you look at these financial experts, if they tell you they've never made a financial mistake, they may not be telling you the full story.
Exactly.
So everybody's got something to share. So, and it doesn't hurt. It makes you a real person because you can tell your clients in your community, it's like, I learned from this.
Hmm.
You can learn too. And that's something your clients are going to feel good about because your clients oftentimes feel bad, like, oh, we don't really have enough money
Hmm.
that we've saved or, whatever we haven't done. And, they don't want to be judged by their financial planners. They want to be heard by their financial planners.
Right. It can be very embarrassing. And I think too, uh, when you find yourself in the midst of a big money mistake, the shame and the fear that I'm never going to be able to recover from this, is just, it can loom so large. And so hearing from other people who have made the same or different mistakes, I think can help you decatastrophize that a little bit, if I can make up that word.
I'll allow it. But I think you're exactly right, is that you can downplay it. And I think oftentimes, especially with money, is we can conflate these ideas in our head when they're not really a big deal. And if you're working with a professional, they can help you walk through it and come up with solutions. There's usually solutions to almost any problem, you know?
Right. Right. There really is.
So, so this has been awesome. So, Hillary, where can people learn more about you and the Finance Marketing Podcast?
Well, I'm always on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my favorite place to be. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Hillary Gale Meehan on LinkedIn. And then my website also is monetacopy.com. And the podcast is the Finance Marketing Podcast, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, um, basically everywhere except at this point, YouTube. I am working this year to get listed on YouTube, and then I will truly be everywhere. But those are the three big places that you can find me.
Awesome, awesome. And for everybody watching and listening, as always, there will be links to Hillary's social media profiles and to her podcast, so you can easily find them in the show notes. Hillary, thanks for joining us today on the Get Ready Money podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tony. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. And thanks everyone, as always, for tuning into this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today to change the way you think about money, please be sure to share with a friend. You can also join the Get Ready movement at tonystewart.com to get access to the Get Ready newsletter and a whole boatload of free resources. Until next time, let's keep changing the way we think about money.